Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin Todd. Thanks again, Cherry and Julia, for having me on this WIST panel today and using it as a platform to share my lessons learned from my job-seeking experience. I am an American living in London. I'm currently working at UNDO Carbon, which is a London-based enhanced rock weathering scale-up. So we use carbon capturing properties of volcanic rocks to sequester atmospheric carbon dioxide. Very niche, very new, very exciting. My role is in the commercial team in marketing and communications, and I've been with them for a little under 3 months now. However, I had zero direct climate experience going into this sector, but like Cherry said, this was a very intentional move. Climate has always been something I've been passionate about, and I knew I wanted to ultimately end up there. But it was very circuitous and probably a 3 to 5 month process of getting, both my personal network built up and my, brand out there in the world, so people could know me and I could know the climate landscape as well. My background educationally is in international relations. And previously I worked for a federal agency of the US government for 5 years in marketing and comms. So again, a very radically different landscape. And it just goes to show, I think, that if I can come from something so big and bureaucratic to something small and enthusiastic and international in nature, anyone can do it. So let me just sort of set the scene. I quit my US government job in December of last year, saying, all right, now's the point to do it. My wife had gotten a job in London in ClimateTech as well, so I had her as a resource, but I knew I was coming into this landscape sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, all right, we've cut the strings loose, we're ready to find something new. So what I hope to do in the next 3 minutes or so is just share some initial strategies that I employed to sort of kick off my job search. Knew it was going to be tough, but going in with a strategic plan was very helpful. So thing number one, defining a list of targets that would fit well both with your interests and passions as well as your lifestyle. So for me, I had been working remotely for a US government agency, again, for many years, but I knew I wanted to sort of connect with people and be more intentional about working for a smaller agency, working closely with very talented individuals in the climate space. So I found something that was sort of hybrid because I wanted to still have that flexibility. So I knew I wanted a startup. I knew I wanted something in the carbon project developer space because I wanted to be closer to the impacts. I didn't sort of want to be detached by being a consultant or something that was sort of going from company to company and not really developing deep relationships. So that was very important to me. And obviously, as you can imagine, working from going from a 10,000 person, very bureaucratic organization to a very lively, young, motivated and passionate organization was a very drastic change and something that I was very excited to execute on. So sort of find your target list of companies, sort of carve out that slice of the climate landscape you're most interested in and narrow in on that slice. I think deeper is a lot better than wider, especially if you know what you want to do and can align it with your skills that you already have, assuming that's the role you want to sort of find yourself in. On a more personal front, before I started sending out applications and stuff, I knew I wanted to build my brand. And that means revamping your resume. Any climate experience you have, that just sort of shoots to the top. Sort of doing a personal assessment of where your skills gaps are, where your knowledge gaps are. I did LinkedIn courses, I read IPCC reports, I watched films, documentaries, etc. So you become a sponge. Anything that can help sort of build you into your climate persona is helpful. And what I also did was I shared the knowledge that I gained. I, sort of was public, which is difficult for me as sort of like an introvert, like, oh, I don't like people who, shout about their accomplishments on LinkedIn all the time. But especially as you're job seeking, this is important because people don't know you. And this was something that had to be impressed upon me as somebody who doesn't, sort of like to be public about them or like to talk about themselves. Because employers are going to be looking at your LinkedIn. That's something that they regularly ask for on applications nowadays. And you need to meet sort of their expectations of their next successful candidate. And they will scroll through that profile. And if it's blank, it doesn't really help them out a lot. And it doesn't help you out a lot. So doing that on a survey of what you do and don't know, assessing those skills gaps, taking courses, just sort of filling in those gaps is very important. Also helpful in sort of determining the stage of company you want to join. If you are, joining a 10 to 20 person organization and you don't have a lot of skills, maybe that's not the organization for you. I knew not having a lot of direct climate experience meant that I was probably not going to be best in like a 0 to 20 person organization, but I probably fit in with a 50 to 100 person organization. So that my current company had scaled up enough to where they had the resources that they could support somebody in my sort of supporting PR and content editing role, but I wasn't qualified just yet to be a head of marketing or a CMO type situation. So good to sort of, again, help filter out your targets. One of the more important things that I did over the course of the 3 to 5 months that I was looking for my climate job was just talk to people, putting yourself out there. I can't emphasize enough in-person interactions. This starts by leveraging what networks you have, because you want to recruit people to be in your corner and help champion what you're looking for. You are just one person, but when you have a lot of people out there who are in your corner and helping you search, that's invaluable, because you never know what connections will ultimately lead to that one yes that you're looking for. Personally, my partner had gone to business school, and now she had all these international contacts that had worked in all sorts of industries. And that really helps by having coffee chats with them. She introduced me to, this person or that person, and ended up one person worked in a venture capital firm, and venture capital firms are good people to know because they are dealing with all these climate tech and startup things, in their portfolios. So if they know you're looking for a job and they can like sort of recommend you to these companies that are looking for talent, that's, again, putting you sort of more centrally in the spider web that will get you more connections and more reach. So I highly recommend leveraging those networks. If you don't have a network, create your own. Create a new community in your area, find a local chapter of climate activists, go to climate protests, attend events in your area. These sort of sustainability talks are happening at universities. There's an infinite amount of things you can do, be strategic about it, but also just getting out there is very, very important. I personally found an organization called Terra.do based here in London. Found my local chapter, went to networking events on a monthly basis, attended their virtual job fairs, and you can enroll in sort of learning for action courses there as well. So very much grateful for them getting me plugged in here in London. So yes, defining your targets, talking to people, improving your personal brand. Those are my 3 major tips, and I will pass it on for there. And I'm looking forward to your Q&A. And I also want to say that I am happy to be a resource if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and have a chat. I'm happy to do so.
That's amazing, Ben. Thank you so much. I've already written down about 5 questions I want to ask you, but I'll hold them to the Q&A. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really valuable. Thank you so much. And now, Toby Knight, are you happy to come and share your experience and your advice with everybody?
Sure, happy to, and thanks for being invited, and yeah, pleasure to speak to everyone. And really insightful, Ben, as well. I feel like I learned a little bit, and from the structure of that as well. I think similar to Ben, initially I wanted to start a career that had impact, but I never really knew what that actually meant and what different opportunities existed in different career paths. So most of my I studied, and that's why I went to study business, a business school, really, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I thought it would help me get a job. And then the reality was that everyone wanted experience, everyone wanted domain experience, and wanted you to show intent in why you wanted to move into different areas. So I feel like most of my career up until now, and probably will continue to be, has been driven by curiosity and really trying on different hats and seeing what I like and dislike around different often I get really attracted by the idea and the really idealistic view of what a company is trying to achieve, and then the reality of what the job, the functional role, or what the job or the business does is something that's not attractive to me at all. And that's really informed my career path and my intent. So I'd like to think I had a big grand plan of how I was very strategic and what I wanted to do, but really I've stumbled from role to role and just trying different challenges, trying different hats, and learning a little bit along the way. So I can talk through a little bit my experience and maybe some lessons I've learned throughout that. I initially talked about wanting to be involved in impact, and the biggest challenge that I felt was needed to be faced was kind of the climate crisis. So that led me to be involved in energy, having no experience in that at all, and working in quite a large traditional firm in EDF, and realized very quickly that I really enjoyed the industry. I really enjoyed the big macro trends and the challenges that need to be faced. I struggled with the corporate setting, working in a company that had tens of thousands of people, and it was very difficult to change the culture or set a new culture on something that's been very mature and success has been achieved in a certain way. So that led me to move away from ClimateTech, and it was a bit of a risk because it's something I always had in my mind that I wanted to do in the long term, but I felt like there weren't opportunities that were exciting to me, frankly. So in that period, I worked at different NGOs. I worked at kind of an investment bank. I worked in venture capital, and ended up my feet in working in a venture capital firm. And really to what Ben's point that he made earlier is that you're in a really fortunate position to meet really inspiring people working on that have unique insights into these really challenging problems and trying to build solutions that scale. And that all really excited and motivated me into what I wanted to do, and was working problems from 0 to 1, all the way to like 1 to 100, and realized that you need completely different skills, and there's completely different levels of ambiguity, and there's such a huge diversity of industry and roles that exist that that I had no idea if I wasn't just being really curious in my career path. So, and there I kind of investor, deal making, meeting lots of really interesting people. I was sat on some boards, so supporting companies as they scale. And alongside that, I know it's very difficult when you're working for a company to really show intent or show action that's outside of your job spec and that's aligned with what your actual personal motivations were. So it was really important to me to get involved in external networking events, setting up my own networking events with peers that equally didn't know what they wanted to do with their career, or wanted to learn and understand about a different sector and path. I worked with companies, founders that and like you leveraged my network to support them in their growth journey. And all of these things that really were driven by curiosity and driven from speaking to more people and learning about what's out there has really helped me in finding my future career roles. I think one of the best pieces of advice that an early manager told me was try to play long-term games with long-term people. I think if you show that you're not just trying something out, and you actually want to, you're trying to progress yourself and try to embed yourself into an industry or career path, and you find peers that are at the same stage or peers that are later stage, then suddenly you have that connection that you can lean on for years and years. And there's former colleagues and people I've built relationships outside of my role that it's amazing. Many years later, I reach out to them, they remember me, and they're still willing to support. So don't, like, it's very easy to not know where to start when building a network, but I think the easiest thing is just to start and show intent and do the small things when about building relationships, in kind of meeting them, following up after an email. If they introduce you to someone else, let them know how it goes. Those little things make a huge amount of difference and sets up opportunities in the future. so any other pieces that would be useful, I would say that in the like, if you don't know where to start, I think TerraDo is a great one. There's lots of these. There's London Climate Connection that does regular events for people who are passionate about climate tech. There's lots of these demo days and accelerators that you can meet new companies that are being founded, and also people who are just interested in the industry. There's a huge amount of newsletters that are out there. There's like ClimateTech VC. There's lots of venture capitalists. If you don't have a direct connection, you can just go onto their website and subscribe to their newsletters, and just see what funding rounds and what companies are coming up. And then you just feel free to reach out to people directly. I think so after leaving VC, I joined another corporate role, but in a venture capital, working with early stage business capacity. And then I wanted to join a startup afterwards, which was Rainbow Energy. And there I got the interview through a completely speculative reach out and just writing a letter, because I respected the person who'd followed their career for a while. And I just wrote a letter of basically saying why I respected them and what skills and experience I had. And then it just set up a coffee conversation with no introduction or connection. And then from there, I got my role. So I think really, key lessons: get driven by curiosity, try lots of different hats, show your long-term intent to the sector and the actions that you've taken to actually become that, to show that you're interested, and just try different things. Stay resilient, I think, is probably the final point on the job hunt. I know when I've been looking around, it's very easy to be low on energy, and knowing like you might have done your 100th LinkedIn application and you feel like you're not getting any responses, and you just can't be bothered to go to that coffee. But do whatever brings you energy and keeps you motivated each day, and that also means having a break and being kind to yourself. Job hunting's really, really hard, and just put yourself out there and build a brand and lean on your network. I think they're the key things, I'd say.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that, Toby. There was loads of really brilliant stuff in there. And again, I've written so many notes, but thank you so much. And I really loved that point about on the newsletters when you said following a company's newsletter. That's a great idea. Because then when you make it maybe even speculative application to that company, you're doing so saying, I follow your newsletter and I really loved this thing you wrote about X, Y, and Z. And it's so much more tailored and personalized and shows you're really following what that company are doing and you're really invested. So that's a great piece of advice. Thank you. Perfect. And so next up, we are going to hear from Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie is the talent acquisition manager for a fantastic business called Provenance. And Anne-Marie will share with you now what her journey actually as a job seeker was and how she ended up getting her role at Provenance, but now sitting on the other side of the fence and reviewing applicants that come through the door and interviewing people to come and join the business she now works for. She's going to give you some great advice on what you could be doing as an applicant, as a job seeker, to stand apart. So Anne-Marie, really look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Cherry. Hi everybody. So I'm the talent acquisition lead at Provenance. Very quickly, we are a platform that validates and amplifies sustainability credentials for consumer packaged goods. So we're empowering customers to cut through greenwash and make informed choices at checkout. And we have like a holistic view on sustainability, which covers 5 areas, but one of which is climate. So we look at environmental impact as well as social impact. My role into ClimateTech is my first role within ClimateTech, Sustainability Tech, and it's actually, I found it through a friend who was looking for a job herself. We all chat about topics with our friends and family, from I guess climate change to the latest Netflix documentary, and really that's how I got that role, because she saw the job with Provenance on Escape the City, their job newsletter, and we talked about what we were conscious of reducing our environmental impact and all this kind of stuff. So she thought of me, sent it over, and luckily we're in totally different job fields, so we didn't have to interview for the same role. But it made me think about that when people talk about looking for jobs and thinking about talking to a network. I used to always think that meant LinkedIn, it meant your former colleagues. And I think similar to what Ben and Toby are saying, don't forget about your friends, your family, like sharing your career aspirations with these people who, it's like your own network of personal recruiters. They see a role and they think you might be interested. They might talk to someone at an event, at a company you might not have heard of. So I think, yeah, really interesting to kind of share what you're looking to move into with those people closest to you. Job boards, there's so many. I think the guys have mentioned some already, but I just wanted to mention that, particularly with smaller companies like Provenance included, we don't advertise on all of them because you have to pay to advertise on all these job boards. So it's worth checking a few out. Like we prioritize Escape the City, but I think Terradu was mentioned. There's Climate EU, Impact Job. I think Julia's going to share some of the links that I mentioned. Cherry's not paid me to say this or asked me to say this, I promise, but following like reputable recruiters like Cherry in this space is a massive, I think, great bit of advice, because you know you're going to see these jobs come up when they're new, and you'll get all these notifications. So I think it's just an easy way of getting access to the jobs that are coming through. In terms of interviewing, so at Provenance, we do ask about a person's interest in the company, in sustainability. But unless it's required for the role, I think this is really important, and something I panicked when I was interviewing. We're not looking for sustainability experts to fill every position at our company. The climate tech space is just full of these really hard, often unsolved problems that will affect everyone. And I think we just need a diverse group of people who are passionate about it to help us create these like innovative, you know, the most innovative solutions that we can. So yeah, important for you to speak to your passions, but authentically, you know, don't feel that you have to overinflate your interest or cram the night before to appear knowledgeable about carbon removal technology or something like that, because they can be learned. And I think being open to learn at Provenance, and I'm sure loads of other companies, is really valuable as well. So yeah, talking about an area that you're interested in, maybe something you've learned from someone you follow on LinkedIn, or even for me, I follow some people that I think are doing great work on Instagram. It doesn't always have to be these business focused avenues, although they are great as well. I think, yeah, I mean, in my interview, if I remember, I've been at Provenance for about 18 months. I think I talked about I'd subscribed to Ethical Consumer magazine, and I ended up talking about, probably a bit of nerves, but I ended up talking about what I look for when I buy coffee. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not why I got the job. So don't get caught up too much in that. I think, you know, remember to highlight your role related skills and your experience like you would for any other industry, and also checking that it's a match for you in terms of company values and ways of working, because, you know, we'll be trying to find that out as well.
So helpful, thank you. And I think so important for people to hear that you don't have to be an expert in sustainability. I think people hold themselves back sometimes from making applications because they think they don't know enough, or they're going to get grilled on a particular area of science. So I think, you know, like you said, making sure that you're conveying your ability to actually do the job, but also your passion to learn, and you know, doing some of the things that Toby and Ben have just suggested to upskill and to learn shows that you're somebody that can learn and can, you know, upskill and pick up a new sector really quickly. So that's so helpful. Thank you so much for that, Anne-Marie. And now James is the engineering manager at Watershed. So James, if you're happy to share your experience of finding your role at Watershed, and then your advice from the other side of the fence and what you look for.
Perfect. Thanks, Cherry. And some great comments already so far. So I'll try and navigate all the things that maybe haven't been said. Let me try and bring some of those. So as Cherry said, I'm James. I'm an engineering manager at Watershed. Watershed is a San Francisco and European company that helps other companies to measure their climate impact, report on their climate impact, and most importantly, reduce their climate impact. The company's been around for about 5 years, and I joined the company 6 months ago to help build out the European engineering product and design team. Personally, I've been in tech for about 15 years, predominantly as a software engineer, but I've also spent some time doing product management. I've also been a head of engineering, and now very happy being an engineering manager at Watershed. And I think one of the things looking over that career that I've loved about a career in tech is this ability to domain hop.
As a result, I've worked in roles within telecoms, within finance, within insurance, consumer SaaS, and climate. I had to write them all down so I could remember. And I think it's been really helpful for me to keep my interest in my career going, learning new domains while bringing across a set of skills that I've learned in other domains has been a really enjoyable journey for me, and one where I feel speaks to Anne-Marie's point about not needing to be like all in on climate. There is roles in this industry for people who have very different experience profiles. And so don't let that hold you back from applying for a role. It's important that we get the best and brightest on this topic. We're going to need all the help we can get. So don't let that hold you back. My journey into Watershed, I wasn't actively looking for a role at the time. I had heard of Watershed. A quick hat tip to Andy, who I think is on the call here, who I have a good relationship with, and he had said that this interesting SF company is coming to London. I'd heard about them when they reached out to me directly a few months later. And I think to Ben's point, I think the reason that they found me directly was because of that LinkedIn profile. It was up to date, it was fresh, it had all of those points that they were looking for, like detailed out in my experience. And I think what I've heard since joining is the super powerful bit of my LinkedIn profile was the recommendations from former colleagues. And the tip I would give you there is you should write it. You write your own recommendation and then ask your colleagues who you trust if they're happy to say that about you. I think that, you know, it's got to be truthful, it's got to be honest, but you need to be there to kind of represent yourself. You're selling yourself on LinkedIn, and I think that if you will probably say something more poignant, more direct about the role that you want to do and your skills in that role if you write it. They can edit it, of course, and bring some things back, but I think that's a little tip that I've used in the past and I think can be really helpful. So yes, a little bit then about kind of aligning your personal goals with company mission. Obviously, when you find a role where your goals are aligned with the company's goals and are aligned with a greater good, it's an incredibly powerful combination of things. The thing that I would say here is, like, be wary of that multiplying effect when you are looking at roles, because it can blind you to some of the risks that you see. And I think we are in a bit of a hype industry here. You know, if we look at the star maybe waning on crypto over time, but AI and climate are probably other areas where there are a lot of people very interested to be in this space, not just for the good, but also for the growth. And so take a slightly, you know, recognize in yourself when you get excited about a role, what am I excited about? And take the time to kind of understand the company, understand the company's goals, and whether not just the fact that they're in climate are aligned with what you want, but also about whether the way that they are trying to impact the climate emergency is something that you truly believe in. We, as a company, work with other big companies to measure and reduce their climate impact. The way that we're going to hit our goals of being responsible for the removal of 500 megatons of carbon by 2030, which is our customer goal, our company goal, is by working with polluting companies. And for some people, that might be not something that they're interested in doing. Some people might want to be much more, you know, on the tech side and kind of working very directly on a very hands-on project, like in Ben's company, UNDO. You should form an opinion through your conversations of where in climate you are most interested. But then I'd quickly undermine that and say, like, as Toby was saying, you know, a career is a long-term goal, and you won't get everything that you want from every role that you work in. And so I wouldn't have got this role in climate if I hadn't have done lots of other roles at startups, at insurance companies, at finance companies, to bring in these different experiences. So if climate is your long-term goal, you might take another role, especially if your early career, in something that isn't exactly where you want to be, but is building your skills in an area where you think you can contribute in a bigger way in the future. So don't beat yourself up if you don't find that perfect role. It's a journey, it's a long one. And then I think just jumping back to kind of what I'm looking for when I'm hiring people, I think, as Anne-Marie said, like, especially in engineering, we are not expecting people to be climate experts. We would love you to have an interest, but it's kind of bonus points at that stage. It's a nice thing to have. It's not the kind of sole criteria that we are judging you on. So really think more about the company and what the company needs from its employees at that time, and what is your relevant experience, rather than over-indexing on being interested in climate. And I would say, like, an interesting in climate at this stage is almost sort of table stakes. Like, I think it's such a climate emergency that probably everyone in this room has a kind of an interest in improving this area. So I think if you want to differentiate, it's more interesting to spend that time looking at the companies you're applying for, thinking about how they are impacting the climate, and talk about your interest in that as an avenue to address the climate emergency. Yeah, and then I think the final point I would say is recognizing the type of company that you're joining. Be it a startup, which is high risk, high reward, high ambiguity. Are you comfortable with that? A growth company like Watershed, where we have an existing customer base, we've got to deliver on the promises, we've got to scale up. Or an established company where they've got a mature customer base and you're trying to offer new products, new ways that you can leverage those relationships. There's no one size fits all. There are loads of, as a fairly new kind of area, climate tech, there are loads of startups, loads of scale ups, but there are a lot of big established companies who are also doing work in this space now as well. So don't narrow your search criteria too soon. I think that's it from me.
Amazing. That's so useful. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. And I liked you kind of echoing that point that we've heard a few times about the length of your career. This is a long-term game, and not necessarily needing this next job you find to be the dream job, but actually what's the job you want ultimately, and how can this next job help you as a stepping stone on that path to get that dream job and build the skill set you're going to need to get there. So that's really useful. Thank you so much. And thank you, just before we stop the recording, just want to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing those insights and those journeys with us.